I woke up that morning to the sound of her voice, soft but urgent, whispering from the living room. I froze mid-step, coffee cup in hand, because the way she was talking. It didn't sound like she was speaking to me. I pressed my ear against the doorframe, trying not to breathe too loud. "That I just don't know if I can anymore," she murmured. "I should have gone in. I wanted to." But something in the tone made me hesitate, like I wasn't supposed to hear it. For a long minute, I just stood there, listening, my mind racing through possibilities. Maybe it was about her mom visiting, or the project she'd been stressed about. But no, the way she kept glancing toward the bedroom, biting her lip. It felt different, heavier somehow. Then she said it, "He looks so much like him." I dropped the coffee cup. It clattered to the floor, pieces scattering across the tiles. Her words didn't make sense at first. Him? Who was him? My heart started hammering. I wanted to step inside, to ask, but the fear of what she might say kept me frozen in place, and then the whispers started, soft, almost behind her, like someone else was there, or maybe just the voice of my own doubt echoing in the quiet apartment. I couldn't tell which. My hands shook, my chest tightened, and all I could think was, what the hell did she just mean? I leaned against the wall, trying to steady myself. The air was thick, heavy with things unsaid, and I realized that by the time I crossed that threshold, everything might already be different. Her name was Emily. We'd met 6 years ago at a friend's wedding, and from the start, it was easy, too easy, maybe. We had that kind of effortless chemistry where even silence felt comfortable, where arguments ended with laughter instead of bitterness. I thought I knew her, or at least the version of her that fit into my life. We moved in together 3 years later, into a tiny apartment with peeling paint and creaky floorboards. I remember the first night we painted the living room together, dripping blue paint on our hands and laughing until our sides hurt. That's the memory I clung to now, trying to anchor myself in something real while my mind spun around the whispers I just heard. Emily had always been careful, meticulous even, about her routines. She left notes for me, little reminders of bills or groceries, but also sweet things. "Don't forget your favorite coffee," or "Smile at someone today." I kept those notes in a box, a small collection of her voice when she wasn't around. That box sat on the shelf in the living room, right by the window where the morning sun would hit it just right. A week ago, she'd told me she wanted a baby. I smiled, nodded, said I was ready too, but I hadn't really imagined it. Not the sleepless nights, not the tiny cries piercing the quiet of early morning, not the way every decision suddenly felt monumental. Yet when I saw her rocking the baby in her arms, a tenderness rose in me I hadn't expected, and now, after those words, "He looks so much like him." All of that warmth twisted into something cold, something I didn't understand. Everything I thought I knew about us, about the life we were building, suddenly felt fragile. Her name was Emily. We'd met 6 years ago at a friend's wedding, and from the start, it was easy, too easy, maybe. We had that kind of effortless chemistry where even silence felt comfortable, where arguments ended with laughter instead of bitterness. I thought I knew her, or at least the version of her that fit into my life. We moved in together 3 years later, into a tiny apartment with peeling paint and creaky floorboards. I remember the first night we painted the living room together, dripping blue paint on our hands and laughing until our sides hurt. That's the memory I clung to now, trying to anchor myself in something real while my mind spun around the whispers I just heard. Emily had always been careful, meticulous even, about her routines. She left notes for me, little reminders of bills or groceries, but also sweet things. "Don't forget your favorite coffee," or "Smile at someone today." I kept those notes in a box, a small collection of her voice when she wasn't around. That box sat on the shelf in the living room, right by the window where the morning sun would hit it just right. A week ago, she'd told me she wanted a baby. I smiled, nodded, said I was ready too, but I hadn't really imagined it. Not the sleepless nights, not the tiny cries piercing the quiet of early morning, not the way every decision suddenly felt monumental. Yet when I saw her rocking the baby in her arms, a tenderness rose in me I hadn't expected, and now, after those words, "He looks so much like him." All of that warmth twisted into something cold, something I didn't understand. Everything I thought I knew about us, about the life we were building, suddenly felt fragile. It started with little things at first. Emily would disappear for a few minutes and return flustered, phone clutched in her hand, eyes darting around like she'd been caught doing something she shouldn't. She smiled when I asked what was wrong, shrugged it off with a laugh, but there was a weight to it, like she was carrying something she didn't want me to see. Then there were the whispers. Not literal whispers this time, but the kind that slip through when she's on the phone in another room, the kind that make you pause and wonder if you're imagining things. One evening, I passed the living room and caught a phrase she didn't mean for me to hear, "That's so sure it's his?" My stomach twisted. And for a moment, I couldn't breathe. I froze in the doorway, pretending to tie my shoe, trying to convince myself it was nothing. I started noticing small inconsistencies, too. She'd mentioned things I didn't remember discussing, appointments, errands, conversations with friends that felt off. I asked about them once, casually, and she laughed it off. "You weren't paying attention," she said, brushing my concern aside. But the laugh didn't reach her eyes. I tried to ground myself in the life we had, in the love I felt for both her and the baby. I told myself that paranoia was dangerous, that sleepless nights could make anyone see shadows where none existed. And yet, each time I looked at him, each time I caught her in one of those small moments of hesitation, that whisper returned, "Who does he really look like?" By the end of that week, I realized I couldn't ignore it any longer. The warmth I had felt toward our life together now carried a subtle chill. I wasn't sure if I was imagining it, or if the foundation beneath us was quietly cracking, right under my feet. By midweek, the atmosphere in the apartment felt almost tangible, like we were living inside a cloud of hesitation and unspoken words. I started noticing the smallest details, her glance lingering on the clock a second too long, the way she sometimes straightened her clothes as if bracing herself for someone's judgment, even the quiet trembling of her hands when she thought I wasn't looking. One evening, while she was rocking the baby, her phone buzzed. She glanced at it quickly, then slipped it into her pocket, face tight with an expression I didn't recognize. I asked casually, "Who's texting?" She shook her head and smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Just work stuff," she said. I wanted to believe her. I needed to. Then came the conversation that seemed, at the time, like the truth unraveling itself. She muttered something about how fast time flies and how similar he looks to someone from my past, almost in passing. My heart skipped. Could it be? Was she admitting something? I felt relief and fear twist together, a kind of cruel comfort. Maybe the whispers, the inconsistencies, all of it, pointed to someone else. Someone harmless, someone from her past who was only in our memories now. I went to bed that night, trying to hold on to that version of the story. I pictured the baby's tiny features, imagined them resembling me entirely. I told myself I was overthinking. That the fear was my own shadow creeping into a life I loved. And yet, even as I drifted toward sleep, a faint doubt nagged at the edges of my mind. What if the truth isn't that simple? I didn't know then that this truth I'd convinced myself of was a distraction, a subtle trap my own assumptions had set. The real story was waiting, just beyond the horizon of my understanding, and when it arrived, nothing I had believed would hold up. The next morning, I finally confronted her, or at least, I thought I was. I found her in the kitchen, humming quietly as she prepared bottles, the baby cooing softly in his crib. My voice was steady, though my stomach churned. "Emily. About what you said the other day. Who did you mean?" She froze for a fraction of a second, then exhaled slowly, a small, tired smile appearing. "I was just thinking about my ex," she said, almost casually. "You know. He was a twin, and sometimes I get these weird flashes, memories. I guess I just meant. The baby has a little of that same expression. That's all." I blinked. Relief surged through me like electricity. My chest loosened, the tension that had gripped me all week suddenly evaporating. So it wasn't about me. Not about him. Nothing shady. I laughed softly, running a hand through my hair, and she reached over, squeezing my arm. "See? You're overthinking again," she said, smiling. For a few hours, I clung to that explanation. I told myself it made perfect sense, that my paranoia had been ridiculous. I watched the baby, convinced that his features were undeniably mine, and I let the warmth return. That evening, as I rocked him in my arms, I felt a fragile peace settle over the apartment. Maybe the tension had just been exhaustion, just the stress of new parenthood, but even as I held him, a tiny part of me hesitated. A thought, quiet and almost imperceptible, whispered in the back of my mind, her explanation fits. But does it really? I pushed it away immediately, ashamed for doubting. I didn't realize it yet, but that false sense of clarity was a mask. Behind it, the real truth was waiting, patient, unforgiving, and about to force me into a choice I never imagined I'd face. It happened late that night. I couldn't sleep, the apartment too quiet, the baby finally down, and my mind spinning with fragments I hadn't been able to place. I wandered into the living room and noticed her phone on the counter, screen glowing with a message preview I wasn't meant to see. My chest tightened before I even read it, timeline confirmed. Do we need to adjust? Something in me froze, a primal panic. I didn't understand, and yet every piece I'd been trying to dismiss, the whispers, the fleeting glances, her hesitations, snapped into a horrifying clarity. I rifled through her messages, clumsy, desperate, and there it was, images, conversations, hints of meetings that didn't fit our story. And a calendar marking dates. Dates that didn't line up with the baby's birth. I felt like the floor had fallen out from beneath me. The memory of her explanation, the relief, the fleeting peace, it was all a shield, a lie told to herself and to me. The baby wasn't mine. The timing didn't add up. Every tiny inconsistency, every whisper I'd overheard, every hesitant smile, it all pointed to the same brutal fact. I confronted her in the kitchen, the words trembling on my lips. Emily. The baby. The timeline. It doesn't match. She looked at me, calm, almost serene, and in that moment I saw no guilt, no panic, just resignation. I know, she said quietly. I didn't know how to tell you. I didn't want to lose you. But it's him. It's always been him. The air seemed to choke me. I could see the truth in her eyes, feel it in the stillness of the apartment. All the warmth, all the tenderness I'd felt, now collided with betrayal. I loved this child, yes, but the life I thought I had, the trust, the certainty, it had been pulled out from under me, and I had a choice to make, stay, and pretend the lie didn't cut so deep, or walk away, knowing nothing would ever be the same. I didn't sleep that night. The apartment felt hollow, each creak of the floorboards a reminder of what I'd just discovered. I sat on the couch, staring at the baby monitor, trying to separate the child from the truth I couldn't undo. He cooed in his sleep, oblivious to the chaos around him, and I felt a strange mix of love and grief. Emily tried to reach me. She sat across from me at the kitchen table, hands folded, eyes heavy with apology. I didn't mean to hurt you, she whispered. But words had lost all power. Every syllable echoed like a hammer striking a fragile wall I had spent years building. I wanted to shout, to cry, to demand answers, but I just stared, my mind replaying every small inconsistency. Every whispered phrase I had overheard, every "he looks like him" that had haunted me. I thought about the life we had, our mornings with coffee, our lazy Sundays on the couch, the small, perfect moments that had once seemed unbreakable. And now, all of it felt fractured. Trust, once solid, had turned to glass, sharp edges ready to cut anyone who tried to piece it together. When I finally looked at the baby, I realized that love wasn't enough to shield me from the truth. I could hold him, care for him, even cherish him, but the betrayal was a shadow that would follow me every time I blinked. Emily's face, calm yet conflicted, reminded me that she had her own guilt, her own reasons. And so I sat there, caught between devotion and despair, wondering if I could forgive, or if some fractures, no matter how tender the intentions, could never truly heal. The apartment was quiet again, but the weight of the decision I hadn't fully made pressed down, and I knew the next step would define every relationship, every moment, and every choice after this. Days passed, but nothing felt the same. I moved through the apartment like a ghost, watching Emily with the baby, hearing her laughter, seeing the way he reached for her arms, and feeling a sharp pang that I couldn't name. I loved him, there was no question about that, but the knowledge of his origins made every moment bittersweet. I tried to talk to Emily, to find some path forward together, but every conversation felt like walking on cracked ice. One wrong word, one glance in the wrong direction, and the delicate balance could shatter completely. She wanted honesty. I wanted truth. But the truth was bigger than either of us, and it demanded choices that I wasn't sure I could make. Sometimes, late at night, I would hold the baby in my arms, rocking him gently, and imagine what life could have been if the timeline had matched, if whispers never existed, if trust hadn't fractured. But reality pressed in, the timeline was wrong, the whispers were real, and I couldn't unhear the words that had started it all. He looked so much like him. I found myself staring at the ceiling, asking questions I didn't have answers to. Could I stay, love him fully, and accept the truth about what had happened? Could I walk away and somehow preserve my own sanity, knowing I'd be leaving someone I cared about deeply? Each option carried its own heartbreak. I don't have a resolution yet. I don't know if I ever will. All I know is that life can pivot on a whisper, a timeline, a choice. And sometimes the hardest decisions aren't about right or wrong, they're about whether your heart can survive the truth. The apartment is quiet now, but I can still hear the echoes of what I can't fix, and I wonder if some betrayals can ever be forgiven. Or if some truths are meant to live with you forever.